whether it's a few dollars or many dollars. In finding out that I wasn't getting satisfaction by going to one of these meetings, I spent time contacting, first of all, the county librarian, and Marie Desper is just a delightful person to sit down and talk with and to get straight answers from. And I really appreciate the time and effort that she gave me personally, both face-to-face as well as through communications, emails, and that type of thing. In addition to that, I spent a lot of time with looking through the documents that are on the town website. I think the committee did a really good job in getting documents on the town website that the needs assessment and other documents that we could take a look at. I did research of online opinions concerning libraries from the futurists. I attended a League of California Cities seminar on libraries and spoke to one of the futurists that spoke at that session, plus the head librarians from Sunnyvale and Monterey. I've met with other elected officials in the county, some of which are on the Joint Powers Board for the library, and they have provided some good insights as well. Tonight, I do have a number of concerns about the process. I think there's confusion as to whom the library is being built for. The library is being paid for by Atherton taxpayers. The taxpayers in the unincorporated area also pay library taxes. But that tax money is distributed by the county board, the governing board of the library, currently on the basis of giving some money to Redwood City and Daly City for access, and then making sure with the rest of the funds that minimum standards in the other branches of the county are being met. None of those funds are in the Atherton donor fund. So first of all the funds to build this library will have been paid by Atherton taxpayers. Determination of the building size is critical in that, as was explained tonight, through benchmarking, certain ratios have been determined, and these have been applied to different kinds of uses on the basis of percentages of population. What is the right size for Atherton? Is the right size for library for Atherton a library that is going to serve a much larger population than just Atherton? Do Atherton residents want to help subsidize the county library system by building that larger facility? That to me is a key policy question that the council should be asking and should be deciding. Right now, the answer is inferred in the documents that 16,000 residents is the right number to be looked at in terms of sizing a library for the size of town of Atherton. One of the things that's really missing in the document in the site plan is any kind of a study of other libraries here in the county. If you look at Burlingame, you look at Foster City, San Carlos, Redwood City, Portola Valley, even go down to Mountain View. And, you know, I've gone to meetings in the libraries of all these towns I just mentioned. These have been government meetings. And all these libraries are cited as part of the town government center. I wonder why. Were they poor planners? they didn't follow the guidelines, and they went and did their own thing. I don't think that that's probably the case. I think they probably found out that they probably thought through and found out that there are synergies as well in having a library as part of a town center, as there might be synergies in having a library in a park. But there's no discussion of that in the site plan document that I could find. I think that's a very important thing that we as a town need more time to think through in terms of use of our facilities. The reason for needing to have a master plan is because even the library site plan says this, we want to avoid duplicating spaces. Well, the only way we can avoid duplicating spaces between the town center plan and the library plan is to have a master plan that looks at all these things. And so, the most rational thing to do is to slow things down here and to approach it in an overall comprehensive manner. If we were to right size the library just for Atherton's population, we'd be looking at something around 6,000 square feet. We might say, okay, that's based upon other libraries and it feels about the right size. But we want to have some unique things for Atherton. We want to have a heritage room. We want to have space to put the artifacts of our town on display and be able to provide future generations a place to admire these things and to really make it part of our town. And certainly I think most Atherton residents would agree that makes all kinds of sense. And that would perhaps justify in adding whatever number of square feet, 500,000 square feet, to this basic right size plan for size of town with number of residents that Atherton has. One of the things in the document that is kind of a teaser is the fact that if the library goes in the park, it's going to pay for a whole bunch of other things. The library agreement states that donor funds shall be spent on library-related activities within the city, including but not limited to facility maintenance, facility remodeling or expansion, increased service hours, or increased book purchases, as mutually agreed by the library JPA and the City Council. I don't know how much discussion there's been with the JPA in terms of these other things that are talked about in the site plan document. I know in talking with one of the members of the JPA just the other day, this person was quite surprised when I explained what the wording was in the site location plan. We ought to know that. We ought to be able to. One of the things we ought to take a look at is, okay, from a financial standpoint, is it better to have the library with a offering to pay for certain things, but we don't know for sure whether they'll get approval on that, and be able to compare that with a new event management model that staff has come up with in terms of managing these events, which you heard tonight have not been very profitable in the past, admittedly, mainly because our fixed costs, which primarily salaries, more than ate up any kind of revenues that were obtained through these other events. And this has changed. And I think we need to give a little time to see how this new model is going to operate. The steering committee concluded that the new library should be a standalone facility not directly connected or incorporated with the town center facilities. I take strong issue with that statement since it's contrary to real situations we see around us, as I mentioned before. Libraries are separate and distinct from government operations. A library is a government operation. It is paid for by taxpayer dollars. The employees are government employees. I don't know who wrote this, but you know, I just I think it's a misleading statement. It's interesting in Monterey and Sunnyvale that even the head librarians there are being given other jobs to do along with their head librarian job that are jobs being performed on behalf of town government. One of the examples was the Monterey librarian who has been put in charge of the convention center and other activities, and I believe the Sunnyvale person also was being given some facility type activities. So, you know, even from that standpoint, there are some synergies that other towns and cities have seen in terms of staff and personnel that are carrying over to benefit the town as well as to the library. So far, I understand we spent about $188,000 on this study and all the other preliminary work that's gone on, and I think there's been a lot of good stuff generated, but I think there's more stuff, more information that we need to have in order to make a intelligent decision. One of the things I think that everybody should be aware of is that we're one of the 3 donor cities, along with Portola Valley and Woodside, but our donor fund is growing at a much greater rate than the other 2 cities. It's growing about $750,000 a year. And so by 2015, we'll have, they estimate, about $8.6 million in the fund there. And right now, when I ask questions about being able to use those donor funds to help other libraries, school libraries, and things like that, it's a pretty restrictive answer I get in terms of what would be allowed. They would fund programs, but I'm unsure as whether they could buy iPods, for example, for the kids in these schools or not. Long term, I think we've got another policy question here. Do we want to remain with the county, remain with the Joint Powers Board? What Atherton could do downstream is give a year's notice and say, okay, we are going to go on our own in a year's time. We are going to develop our own bylaws. We'll certainly have to abide by rules. But we'll be able to interpret ourselves in those bylaws as to what library services can be used for. I'm not advocating that tonight, but I'm just saying that downstream, hopefully, we'll continue to see a growth in the library funds through growth in our assessed property valuations, and so that it may not be $750,000, but it'll be a considerable amount of money that once the library is built, a considerable amount of money that will be available to help in the way of library services in other ways. There won't be any reason to save it to build another library, so it's something to think about. I think there are too many questions to move forward in declaring the park as a preferred site for the library. The community is telling us to slow down and do this right. I think the decision to move ahead on a facility master plan that will include a closer look at size and use for all facilities, including the library, should be aimed at Atherton's needs. The community is asking that we do this. higher construction costs or risk. But the other side of the coin, doing it, not doing it right is a greater risk. I think the master plan will help to ensure taxpayers are getting their money's worth and the efforts are not being duplicated. I think working together helps to better ensure success of both projects. Gives donors to the town center a better feeling and more acceptance to spend money on a new, will also give more acceptance to spending money on a new library. I think we should follow through in the Park and Rec's recommendation to poll a town on the question of whether or not the town should include the park as a potential location for the new town library. You know, if there's a majority of the town said, okay, we are in favor of having the library in the park, then I would say, let's make it a preferred site. But until we are ready to take that survey, I don't think that we ought to take that step. I think the town survey is another step as a means of getting a sense of the community. And I would hope that for the next council meeting there would be some work done in how that survey could be undertaken. I'm looking forward to the special meeting. We need to, the community center concept. One of the things that wasn't mentioned tonight was that the library of the future is headed towards more of a community center type of facility. And here again, another reason why there should be planning that takes place between the town center and the library as part of the master plan. That covers some of my thoughts. I may want to say something later on.
Elizabeth?
So, all through this process of going, having the library proceed, I have always said that we need to have public outreach. I sound like a broken record. I would want to make sure that enough of the Atherton residents had an opportunity to weigh in. I know how difficult it is to get their attention, and I know that the Library Steering Committee heard my pleas and added one additional public outreach meeting. Unfortunately, I don't believe many of the Atherton residents attended those outreach meetings, and if they did, a lot of their voices were not heard. Which then brought us to the point where all of a sudden it became known that this was going to come up on this agenda, and several residents, Julie Quinlan, Dee Dee Fisher, went out and started asking their friends, and within a very short period of time, over 300 people have responded in a concerned voice to the effect that do not approve the library at the park at this time. What we need is good governance, we need due diligence, we need a master plan to look at all of the civic projects in town and taking into consideration not just one location of the current existing site of the library, but all of the town center property, as well as potentially the park. I am not going to go into all of the reasons and the whys. I think that the library needs assessment that was conducted back in October, November 2008 was inadequate, was extrapolated based on cookie cutter assumptions from the library group, and literally kind of just railroaded through the council as this is the way it had to be. But it is my sincere opinion that the approval for the library as the at the park as the preferred location, subject to a CEQA, is really the cart before the horse. Listening to former Mayor Jans's public comments about the rules and the way CEQA works and what is here in front of us on the agenda item, we really can't vote the way the agenda item is structured. And it made me feel uncomfortable because I do believe that a CEQA process should be conducted as early as possible in the planning process, but I don't want to identify one site as the preferred location. There are many sites that the CEQA process could look at, and not just the existing site of the library or the park site, but all of the Atherton property. And since the town council really pulled together, I think tonight, in what was a really unanimous decision to hold a special public meeting within the next couple of weeks to look at conducting a master plan for all of the facilities, I think that's a signal that we really need to do that. We need to slow down. I agree that the Park and Rec's decision and recommendation to council to survey the town is really the only way to get a unified decision. I'm so sorry that this has become a divisive part of our town process. It can be a wonderful, exciting process. I know the Atherton Steering Committee, the Library Steering Committee, has done a lot of work, and I'm not negating that. There's just a lot more work to be done. I think that if we go forward with a master plan scenario, that's just nothing short of good governance. It's prudent to be conservative and diligent here. And if it's determined that the park is the best place for the library, then I would agree. That's fine. You know, the members of the Library Steering Committee shouldn't feel, if they feel that it's the best place, they shouldn't feel concerned that it's going to be knocked off base by going through the master planning process. I really think that we need to slow down. The numbers of Atherton residents who have come out and said, I'm concerned about this, about the traffic and the parking, potential loss of parkland, the potential concerns about the historic nature of the existing library. It's been there since 1920s, and the trains have been going by. It's charming. If you read the needs assessment and the surveys, the people's comments in the back, they say they love the small library. It's charming, it's cozy, they enjoy it. And those things are never talked about in the current planning here. I just feel that it's up to council to take a step back. We need to be unified in this. Survey the town, do a master plan, and then we can all come together with a unanimous vote on what next to do.
I'm going to ask Councilmember McKeithen now for her comments.
I've always said in my now 11 years as a council member that I've always tried to do what I thought was best in the best interests for the people of this town, not for a select neighborhood, not for a select group of people, not for my supporters, not for people who liked me, didn't like me, but what I thought was good for the general well-being of our town. And what I'm going to say tonight, and the position I take, is with that in mind. If indeed that park location were to be found for any reason, at any time, up to the time if it were ever to pass, they start to put a shovel in the ground and find that the ground is contaminated, I would be the first to say, stop it. This is not the right location. If there were any other overwhelming reason for it not to be there, I would probably be the one out there leading the bandwagon saying it shouldn't be there. But I haven't heard any such reason. These are the sorts of things I've heard. And it really makes me sad. I've heard we should have the children in the basement. They don't need a view. We don't need a bigger library as a consequence. We don't need computers. We have them at our home. The fact is, many of us don't know how to use them lots of times, but that's inconsequential. We don't need a view. We have views at our own homes. The fact that we don't even need quiet space. We have such big homes, and frankly, a lot of them come pretty close to the size that we're projecting this library might be. Some of them are even bigger. But the fact is, a lot of our families are less than functional in lots of ways, and we don't have a lot of quiet space in many of our homes. I've heard about ebooks and how they're the future. Yes, they are. The digital age is upon us, no question. But isn't it odd that with all this technology, libraries, and this is not my statistic, libraries are becoming more in use than ever before across the country, across the world. I was recently in St. Petersburg and in Sweden, and it was amazing to me. And you talk about Sacred Heart building libraries and all these school libraries. Why are they doing it? We're not the only ones. They're building more libraries, we're hearing. Why? These are educational facilities, and yet clearly they've done their analysis, and they're building bigger and better libraries. Why? Because they've done the same analysis we've done, and they've come to the same decision. People, even with ebooks, are using libraries more and more. They like the segregated space. They use it as a gathering space. They want to learn about computers. They want to meet their neighbors. We are a community of walls. There aren't many places for us to get together and communicate with each other. They want to share the art. They want to learn about their history. I heard about how we did our outreach with Little League. Well, I don't remember having 3 community meetings when we talked about Little League. I've heard about how we have a teaser in our report with regard to the things that the JPA might provide. Well, I only know that we talked about maintenance for the grounds. And we have spoken with the head of the JPA about that possibility on a number of occasions. And had the member of council spoken with any member of our steering committee, which I have asked him to do so on multiple occasions, including by email, asking, do you have any questions on us? Please tell me what they are, and got no response. That might have been something that we could have answered. Now, there is a petition circulating, and people want a master plan. Isn't it odd, that at no time during the Town Center Task Force or the Blue Ribbon Committee, of which the 2 council members who are now so in favor of a master plan, they never raised that issue in the years that they've been discussing this? Why now? Why a master plan so important when we're talking about a library in the park, which so happens to have a master plan? And do I believe that master plan should be updated as one of our people who wrote? And we received many letters in support of the library in the park, and I'm not going to read them all. You're welcome to look at them. But said, I'm in support of a library in the park, but I think you should update your park master plan. Absolutely, she's right. It should be updated. There are changes taking place there, multiple changes taking place there, and we should update it. When we're looking at a Little League and we're looking at a house that's looking at plant life, when we're looking at possible changes and expansion of a Little League or diminution of tennis courts, absolutely. We should be upgrading that master plan, and that's what we on the steering committee have been thinking we've been doing all along. But if indeed That is not the community perception. Of course we should be doing it. And we should ask the dames and the foundation and the community and everybody and anybody who is concerned about this to become a part of that. Statistics. We talk about how few or many people have become involved in this. Well, 70 people, I understand, attended the task force, attended the community meeting with regard to the community center. I understand there was one comment made about the library, and not extensive comments made about a master plan. So why now? Again, the question, why now all of a sudden this outpouring of interest in a master plan for a library in a town center? Nowhere in the town center document, Blue Ribbon Task Force or the task force, is a library mentioned as part of that town center. But suddenly a library is becoming part of that town center. There were extensive studies done. Are you saying the Blue Ribbon Task Force didn't do its job? It did it for more than a year. It was a wonderful report. Everyone acknowledged that in the community and on this council. The task force didn't do its job. It was supposed to do community outreach, by the way. That was one of its major conditions. It did no outreach. But the council accepted that report and seemed to think it was just wonderful. Look at what the library's done. And yet, we're told that we have rushed the process. How? What more could we have done? Go door to door? Knock on walls? What? What did you want us to do? You talk about other libraries. Well, Pacifica is doing a similar study right now. They have a group, a survey area of 46,000 residents, plus. It's a little over 46,000. They had 2 community meetings. 60 people attended one, 45 attended another. By that standard, Atherton is doing just great. We have Felton Gables. Their community group totally supports what it is we're doing. Do we want to close them off entirely because they haven't opened up their gate? Which, by the way, I didn't say, but it just so happens that gate crosses private property of the Felton Gables neighbor, which is one of the issues that we have to address. It's her private property. We have letters of support from lots of different people in the community, but often those are people in the community who don't want to become embroiled in lots of different disputes. But we've had disputes before. We've had some pretty nasty issues come before us. We had an issue that had divided a street for years. It was a rezoning issue. It came before this council 3 times. 3 times it divided that street just about 50-50. And the street was sure that when we acted upon it, if we did rezone it to allow for greater building, people were going to start building, at least as far as that area is concerned, little monster homes all up and down the street. Nothing happened. We rezoned. It's quiet. I don't even know if a single person has built. People have settled down. People might rebuild. They might expand. But it was much ado about nothing. This library committee has done its homework. It has done its outreach. It will go ahead, and it fully intends to do a master plan. It will seek community output on what the size of this library will or will not be. It has every intention of meeting SEQA requirements, whatever they and whatever the organization of the LSA environmental consultants determine is necessary. Whether that be looking just at the library in a park or the existing library or other locations as well. That will not be for any of us to determine. It will be for them to determine based upon our community. And once that is determined, they will make their assessment as to whether it should be a negative declaration or an EIR. And we will wholeheartedly determine to abide by that. And that would be part of what this council would agree to tonight. A preferred location is not making it a project. By the definition of a project, this is not yet a project. That has been determined by the head of the county planning department who was consulted on this and our own private attorney. It does not meet the definition of a project. There's a new case law that specifically says that this is not a project. It is right on point. It is in the 4th District, and it cites a California Supreme Court case. We are allowed to go ahead and state a preference for a site. That is my opinion, and that's our attorney's opinion. And I believe it's time we, in the words of the Almanac's editor, had the courage to do so. That is what this council has been given the determination to make. And I think we should have the spine to do so. I think we've waited long enough. I think we represent not just those of you here, but the entire community. I don't think we are trying to spend all the money that's there. I don't think we looked at a pot and determined how much is there. I think we have been as cheap as anyone can be cheap, to the point that when we have food, because we have a long meeting, our own members pay for it, because we don't want to have to expend library funds. And I don't know really what more to say to convince you, but that this is something we are trying to do for you. There are members of this committee who care deeply about the park. One of them, the head of our committee, is one of the 3 people who on her own dime developed the master plan for this park. Others, like Sandy Crittenden, have been involved with the foundation and helped with saving the water tower for years. Others have worked with the Dames and with the park also for a very long period of time. But when I hear a potential threat should we remain on the JPA, let me tell you, there are communities, there are libraries on the peninsula in San Mateo County who are itching to become part of the JPA. And we say no, because it's too expensive for them to maintain their own libraries. So if we should ever have it come before us, not to be